Welcome, hello everyone, to the first testing stream, the first Chinwag, the first Roundup, the first bit of chat about this 2023 Formula One season. Oh, it's good to be back. Roll intro, Bosch, have some of that. Look at that 3D logo, Tommo, little spin, and we're here, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for taking the time. Thank you, Salmon Cakes, Michael, Kenneth, Board, Bogdan, Byron, Dam, Gooey, Isabel, Neo, Gregory, Jeeps. Welcome everyone who's live. Welcome everyone who's watching after the fact as well. And I'm going to try my best to be disciplined this year with all of these pre, post-race and testing live streams, which this is the only testing one, obviously. To upload these on audio only as well. So if you are listening to this just through your ears and through nothing else, then we're good. We're good. Thank you all for coming. Oh, Matthew, you almost got me there, Matthew. I looked at the live chat and I saw someone say muted. I was like, oh, no, please, no. But we're fine. You're just waffling. But well done. You almost got me. You almost had me. Right. Wherever you are in the world. Mr. Cringe on the West Coast, big up. Testing. Where we all make wild assumptions about what's going to happen, and then the reality is often not the reality at the front of the field. I mean, typically we see the teams at the top in testing, but, oh man, this midfield and lower field this year is going to be tough to predict. It's going to be very tough to predict. Predictions are coming. I've seen a few of you in chat. Hello, Hannah. Hello, wife. Also in chat. You have to do your predictions, Han. Maybe you can do your predictions and I'll do mine and we'll put it together. How's that sound? That sounds fun. Mate, I've got more questions than answers after testing, especially for the lower end of the field, not even the midfield. Like, you look at Williams last season, they were kind of off on their own. But from what we've seen in testing, they don't look like they're off at sea. They look in that fight. So I think there was a quote from Andreas Stellis saying, with McLaren, regarding McLaren, it's going to be touch and go whether you go out in Q1 or get to Q3. Because it's just going to be so tight in that you can't even call it a midfield really. Outside of the top three, I guess. I mean, that's assuming Aston Martin aren't going to be up there fighting as well. So we'll see, but we'll talk all about it. There's not really a midfield anymore, because a midfield implies there's a midfield and then a lower field. But I don't think there is. It feels like everyone's kind of in the midfield apart from the top three. But yeah, everyone looks capable of points. Is a very good way of putting it. Very good way of putting it, which I'm on the table a bit, which I'm happy to hear about. But there's been some news, actually. Before we get into this, I saw an article posted by a certain Toby Gruner, German journalist, very, very reliable source. And AlphaTauri might be up for sale. So basically, new Red Bull management. Obviously, I'm guessing that's come into place since the passing of Dietrich Mateschitz. Has justified, to quote this, new Red Bull management determined that the results and the marketing value of AlphaTauri of running an entire F1 team just to promote a clothing brand, the costs don't justify, the ends don't justify the means, especially as they're calling it a sister team now, not so much a junior team. If they really wanted to go in with that, then you could argue their perspective in the past was like, right, we can justify this because it's feeding young drivers into our top team and the priority is making Red Bull the top team. Now that Red Bull are the top team, and then the juniors almost can come to them versus them needing a second team necessarily to funnel juniors through, and they can have relationships with other teams as well. It's like, Ferrari use Haas as a junior team, Mercedes can use Williams as a junior team. In some way, that's what's happened in most recent years. I made a video 4 months ago talking about it, and there is potential to relocate the team to the UK, which would be a shame. Like, obviously, you've got that Faenza facility, so I guess even if if they did relocate to AlphaTauri to the UK, then they would build a new facility in the UK, or maybe expand the current Red Bull facility. I don't know how that would look in terms of, like, there's already questions, valid questions, I think, around, one company owning two teams. So for then AlphaTauri to move to the UK and move right next to Red Bull at Milton Keynes, for example, would certainly raise some eyebrows, and fair enough. And then there's obviously, then that leaves the Faenza facility vacant for someone else to potentially purchase it. I mean, if Andretti can't get a deal across the line, but then I guess it's like Andretti are building their facility already. So you could argue that there's maybe value in Andretti buying the team off of Red Bull and then keeping the team in Faenza for like a few years. And then once their Indiana base in Fisher is finished, which isn't due till like 2026, I think, then moving the team out to there, maybe. That could be a good route in. I mean, if you listen to Ted Kravitz, then F1 teams can be valued at what, almost £1 billion to buy an F1 team, maybe. Am I buying it? Look, YouTube's done me well, but not that well. Not quite that well. Andrea Moda to Italy. Well, look, we'll see. It makes sense though. It honestly, like, I didn't make that video just for clickbait. I made that video because I genuinely thought, how much longer can they justify keeping this team going? And it turns out the new people in charge agree. We'll see though, because obviously the value of F1 and the cost cap, as the value goes up, the cost cap is stifling spending. Will these teams start to become profitable? I think Christian Horner spoke recently about he feels like Red Bull are the closest team to be able to operate independently and not have, Big Daddy Red Bull supporting in the same way that Big Daddy Daimler supports Mercedes or Big Daddy Gene supports Haas. You know what I mean? Because if you don't know, right, like Haas CNC, which they promote on the little visors, you go to like Mercedes, have a walk around, there's Haas CNC machines all over the place. Like, Haas CNC is a massive organisation. Like, Gene's got his fingers in plenty of pies, but obviously Tommo F1 team would pop, don't get me wrong. I don't think I'd call it, that's a bit too self-indulgent, I guess it's like, yeah, you could say, McLaren surname, Andretti surname, fine. But like, I couldn't call it Tommo F1 team, could I? That would just be... that's a bit too self-indulgent for me. Honda Charmander is a good shout. Honda, yeah. Again, like, Honda have got that relationship with AlphaTauri because actually when Red Bull took Honda on as an engine supplier, they ran Honda engines in the AlphaTauri first. That first season, wasn't it? And then eventually they then started supplying Red Bull. So they've got that relationship there. That would make sense. If Honda did want a works team, they could purchase the team off of Red Bull. Again, there's a relationship there. That would be cool. Porsche, maybe. I think having a Porsche team, look, you could argue that with, Mercedes are based in England. Right? How does that make sense? Or Audi are based in Switzerland. I think Porsche being based in Italy just is I don't know, that I don't see Porsche necessarily. Well, I guess it's like, if you buy the team, you're not just buying the personnel and the facility, you're buying the ticket, the entry. You're buying the fact that you don't have to pay the 200 million buy-in fee, which they're talking about raising as well. So it's kind of like, do you spend 900 million on buying a team? These are stupid numbers, aren't they? Do you spend 900 million buying a team, or do you spend say they raise it to 600 million, starting your own team, and then you have to pay, that's just to enter. Then you have to pay 300 million to put towards that facility and all those costs. Because does anyone know actually, does anyone in chat know what Aston Martin have said? Have they said how much their new facility has cost them? Because that would be cool to know. Because I don't know if they've made that public or whether they've just like £3, you reckon? Yeah, I reckon. 1,350,000,000. Like, and that's a huge facility, you know, massive infrastructure, wind tunnel, all the bells and whistles. 3 to 500. I mean, you're giving me a lot of different numbers, chat. You're really not helping me. But either way, there's certainly, you know, if you buy a pre-existing team, you're not going to have to deal with any of the resistance that, you know, Andretti are dealing with at the minute as well. So there are pros and cons. There are pros and cons. I'm seeing a few of you say 200 million. So, okay, so you could buy for a 600 million entry plus 200 million to build this amazing facility. You've still then got 100 million left over to put towards all the other associated costs versus spending 900 million on a team, you know? We'll see. I trust you, Dime. If you say 200 million, it's 200 million. But yeah, we'll see. Anyway, bit of news we thought we'd start with. But anyway, back to testing. Final day of testing. Got the timings up here. Checo, 1:30.305, quickest time of testing. Typically, you see on day 3, in the more representative conditions when the temperature's a bit lower, and that's when you'll chuck the softs on. Low fuel, glory runs, Bosch. Red Bull did things a little differently. They only had one driver in the car each kind of day, really. Although then you had Albon and Bottas doing all of the mileage on this final day as well for Alfa and Williams respectively. There we go. Respective. What was pole last year? I'm bored. Checo beat Leclerc's pole time from last year. What was? I didn't actually check. What was? I need to shave, don't I? I need to shave. Getting a bit long around the mouth. 30.5. Okay, so they've already gone quicker. And again, is that Checo going absolutely full tilt, absolute quali run? Probably not. Like maybe close, but probably not. Absolute full tilt. Very unlikely. You know, maybe a bit more fuel in the tank. And again, when you're pushing in testing, like what is the value of pushing and risking over pushing and then putting it into the wall? Obviously, Bahrain does make that a little bit easier as well, because there are big runoffs. So we didn't see anyone shunt it into a wall, which I'm very grateful for, because that would have been, especially one of the rookies, that would have been very cringe. But there you go. It's a faster tyre too. It's on C4. Leclerc was poles on the C3. Yeah, that's the thing. I think the compounds as well. Like, obviously they've changed up the tyres this year, haven't they? Slightly, to try and make them a bit more front darty on the front and a bit less understeery. Essentially, that's my understanding of it. Anyway. Could be. Yeah, what do we reckon, Charmander? Good shout. What do we reckon for pole at Bahrain based off what we've seen? Are we going to see anyone in the 28s? Are we going to see mid 29s? What are we thinking? Because you got to think, what if it was 30.5 last year, with obviously the raising of the floors, but then a lot more understanding of these cars. I think 28's asking a bit too much, just because if the floors were still as low as they were, but they've raised them a little bit, but then the teams do understand these cars so much better now, because they were literally going in blind last year. So yeah, maybe then. I think it will be lower than a. Yeah, I think again, if Charles did a 30.5 last year, I think we're taking at least a second off, at least bare minimum a second. 1 step harder on tyres. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, it does depend on the tyre allocation. I'm assuming I'm assuming they've. But yeah, but surely that understanding, like every team was so green at Bahrain last year. They were so like. Didn't understand like, couldn't possibly have understood hardly anything about their cars in practice. Like, they were porpoising all over the place for one thing. So I still think at least the second's coming off. I'm saying mid 29, maybe low 29 for like a. You got to think max. I think a low 29. I think somewhere between 29.0 and 29.5 in that kind of range. Remains to be seen. But Rick McLaren. Look, what we do now, we're going to go through each team, okay, one by one, in reverse championship order from last year, and I'm going to do a poll for each team. I'm going to ask you whether you think the team in question has relative, and this is relative to the rest of the field as well, because obviously everyone's improved. Everyone will have made their cars faster. It's just if you've made your car half a second faster, but then the team next door has made their car 7/10 faster, then you've lost out relatively, right? So we're obviously going to start with Williams. Will.i.am's, big up. Albon, Sargent, glorious, wonderful, all in this year. The merchandise isn't great though, Williams. I've got to say I'm disappointed. Right. How should I word the question? I'll just say, what do you make of Williams? So have they improved relative to last year? Are they neutral relative to last year? So about the same. I'll just say same. Improved, same, gotten worse. There you go. Right. Let me know in the poll. What do you think of Williams from what we've seen so far in testing? Because you got to say that in terms of laps put in, lack of technical gremlins, have they had any in testing? On track, anyway? I can't remember a Williams pulling up. Yeah, tons of laps. Looks reliable. And again, this is improved relative to the field or gotten worse relative to the field. Obviously, everyone's cars got quicker. I mean, if your cars got slower from last year, then you that's bad. You did a bad. But yeah, what do we think so far? And look, obviously, yeah, Hugh, look, purely the car or the drivers, I think you've got to do it relative to Alex, really, because he's the driver who's carrying over from last year. Obviously, Logan's a big unknown for sure. I mean, when you look at his junior career and you look at how close he pushed Piastri in Formula 3 in that instance, like, and you look at his junior karting career as well, like he's had a lot of success. It wasn't the most straightforward route. It's really interesting, actually, when you look into Piastri, Sargent, and how Piastri in 2020 they were like level, and then Piastri went and won F2 in 21. Logan had to stay in F3, and then was like down the order in a Charouz, and then all of a sudden they went on vastly different paths, and then they've kind of come back together again, and have their rookie seasons at the same time, which is pretty cool. So I think Logan's going to be a good step up from Latifi in terms of performance. 69% you think they've improved. 28% same. Because that's the thing, right? By the end of the year, I mean, in the second half of the season, let me find the graphic, right? Sorry to audio-only people, but I put together some graphics where I was looking at and some of you be like, oh, well, this doesn't mean anything. Well, I think it does. Okay, so if you look at the constructors, but you only take into account the second half of the season, which is, again, first season of new regulations, the first half is always going to be tricky. Like Aston Martin were nowhere because they really didn't understand their car. Second half of the season, you're starting to get on top of things. You're starting to find your place in the field. And wow, that graphic's massive. Look at that, blimey. Right. Second half of the season last year, and look, obviously that's a small amount of points difference, but Williams did actually outscore Alfa Romeo if you only look at the second half of the season. Which I think there is some value in doing that, because you're looking at the momentum that, for example, Alfa Romeo, right? They had a great start to the year, then they slumped off. They're going to bring big upgrades, but are they actually going to do what they hoped? Not necessarily. But the point of showing this is that Williams are P8 on this list. They scored more points than Alfa and Haas. So, and that's the thing, right? You talk all about, oh yeah, we held off, we bring development. Yeah, but just because you bring upgrades don't mean they're going to do what you think they're going to do. Like, bringing an upgrade doesn't guarantee. It's not like in the F1 manager game. I don't play the F1 game, but F1 where you like bring an upgrade and it like guarantees an increase in performance. Like, it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes, you have to go back to the drawing board. Sometimes it works better than you thought it would. So, it's all well and good being like, oh yeah, but they could bring it. Yeah, and maybe they will. Maybe they will improve, but maybe they won't. So, yeah, lots of error time as well, Ken. That's a good point. Williams with 115% ATR, almost what? Red Bull had 63% of the baseline, and Williams had 115% of the baseline. So you're getting close to double the amount of wind tunnel and CFD aero kind of runs for Williams compared. So their car looks good as well. Like, it, not just from a livery point of view, but I think it's looked good. It's looked solid. I'm inclined to agree with the 70% who say improved. I think they've put themselves now. They're not going to be off the back at the end. Do I think they're going to be fighting at the front of the midfield? No, but I do think they will be in with a shot of points, an opportunity of points most weekends. And yeah, quality over quantity. Exactly. Quality over quantity. It's not just, having more time. It's how do you use that time? How can you do you have the facilities to make that time really count? And do you, so that's where, again, the big teams are still going to have an inherent advantage because they've built these processes. They understand their facilities, Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull. But over time, hopefully, like, as the sport continues to, because this is the thing, right? As the sport grows, the value of all these teams grows, the amount of sponsors you can bring in, therefore, the more of interest, the more eyeballs, the more sponsors, etc., right? Where the cost cap stays still, you're, say in the past, right, you're spending, you can, the cost cap say 135 million, right? And you're bringing in 120 through the door, right? So you really want to be spending every penny of that money towards stuff that is to do with car performance, because that's everything under the cost cap. Marketing, for example, isn't included. There's a lot of costs that aren't included in the cost cap, but you want to chuck everything to that. Say then you bring in an extra 100 million, so you're bringing in 220. The cost cap's still 130. Well, you can easily hit that cost cap, and then you've still got 90 million left over to invest in a new wind tunnel or invest in whatever, like more structural stuff around the team to then build the legacy, like, rather than just chucking everything at developing the car on a year-by-year basis but not being able to invest in your facilities. And that's where Aston Martin are obviously in a strong place, because they are putting the 250 million or whatever it is towards the big new facility and getting all these ex-Red Bull and Mercedes personnel in and throwing the money at Fernando Alonso seemingly to bring him in as well. So yeah, we'll see. Right. Next, Williams, we've talked about 70% of you think improvement, 28% same, only 2% think they'll have gotten worse since last year. So all in all, you're feeling pretty positive about Williams. Right, next team, AlphaTauri. Let's get the poll going. What do you think of AlphaTauri? Interesting one. It's hard. It's difficult. So have they improved relative to last year? Have they stayed the same, or are they worse than last year? What do you think from what we've seen? And again, I'm talking more here about the car, and you've got to look at Yuki. It is his third year at this team. Every team has at least one driver who's been there for a while now, so you can use them as a reference. I'm not sure what to think of AlphaTauri. They had a difficult year last year. I do think it's a mistake. I don't know if it's what it's born of, that they don't take more from Red Bull. Like Haas take everything that they can get from Ferrari, that they take everything they can get away with. But AlphaTauri don't take everything they can get away with from Red Bull, even though Red Bull have the quickest package. You would think that it would make sense. I don't know if is that just is that a product of, you know, ego, or is that pride? Pride's a nicer way of putting it, I suppose. Or is it a case of, you know, they've got their own they are a separate team, like technically. They might be owned by Red Bull, but they do try and operate as an independent individual team, which is nice. I appreciate that. I appreciate the team does try and do its own thing, but is that naive? You know. But then again, I suppose last year, look, 2021, they were third quickest car at times because Ferrari were nowhere. Like on certain weekends with Pierre Gasly at the wheel, popping it top 6 in quali almost like more than half of the races he put it top 6 in quali, I think, in 2021. I could be wrong now, but I'm pretty sure he did. He was on absolute rails in that car. They've got the capacity, they've got the facility to do it. They've proven it, and it was just they were nowhere last year. Really disappointing. Yuki was, the thing is, right, yeah, Yuki's, I'm honestly, right, and it's one of them that it's just out of pure belief, because I definitely think there's a really good driver there in Yuki. I think he's shown more top end pace potential than Schumacher did, even though they both made very costly mistakes to their team. Like Yuki more costly in terms of points, like silly, you know, Canada, Silverstone, for example. Schumacher was writing off chassis as well, so that didn't help him. But I do think that there's very, very, very valid questions around Yuki Tsunoda, and he has to beat De Vries this year. There's no excuse like De Vries being a, you know, F2 champion, being a Formula E champion. Like, sure, yeah, he's not your average rookie, but you know what, Yuki, you've been at this team for 3 years now. This has to be it now. The pressure's on. This sport ain't a charity. You will lose your seat if you don't beat De Vries, you know, and beat him, not smack, but beat him comfortably. I think he has to. And look, what happens if they're close? It's a good point. Like, points don't tell the full story, for sure, but you have to then you have to then rely on the team to take into account the nuance of, okay, what happened when, you know, when Yuki threw away that opportunity for points in Canada, for example. You know, that was on him, like firmly on him. But then if, I don't know, there's a safety car and a really annoying time and you drop 4 places and then you fall out the points, you can't put that on the driver. So it's like, points tell like 50% of the story. But if you really want to understand whether you want to keep a driver or not, the team owes it to themselves to look into those numbers a little bit more, right? And not just be like, oh, points. Oh, you scored less points. Bye. Like, you've got to actually look into why, I guess, you know? And that's the thing. But will they give them the car to develop? Because me saying, you know, you can't underestimate De Vries. You can't underestimate it. He's tested in loads of different F1 cars. He's raced a race and did incredibly well in that race. You know, back in 2018 in F2, he was 15 points behind Lando, I think. He was about between 20 and 15 points behind Lando and Alex in that season. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't watch much of the 2018 F2 season. It was a long time ago. But he won multiple races that year. You know, he got multiple podiums. He was consistently up there in the points. He was fighting on merit with those 2 in particular. Obviously, George was kind of checked out at the front. You know, De Vries has ability, he has talent. That's clear. You can't underestimate that. But if Yuki wants to consolidate himself in this sport and make himself appealing to other teams, because we don't know what's going to happen with AlphaTauri. You know, if they are going to sell him, say they sell to Andretti. Andretti want to bring in an American driver. They've already said this. Then that's a potential seat gone. If it's Honda who come in, then maybe he's a bit more assured. But when there is that, a bit degree of insecurity now that this article's come out about AlphaTauri potentially being up for sale, then you have to do what you can do to kind of to fight, to consolidate. But 55% of you said same, so no noticeable improvement relative, which I'm inclined to agree with. I don't think it will be any worse than last year relative to the rest of the field, but I think for them to, I can't see them being any higher than, bottom 3. It really depends if Yuki steps up and really delivers on the pace he's shown on numerous occasions last year. He outperformed Gasly. Not enough, but it did happen more than once. Then maybe he can drag that car to higher results. But we'll see. Oh, also, before we go on to the next team, does the AT livery look better on track? Because seeing that red of the Orlan on track, I personally think it looks better than it did in the renders. And I think most people I've seen have said, oh yeah, that actually doesn't look too bad. Even like this is front on, and it's just the render of the front on angle looked horrific. It looks so bad. In this instance, it's not quite as, like I don't think any of the cars this year look bad. Like I know some of you weren't happy with me for putting Haas last in my. I don't dislike the Haas. It's okay. It's alright. It's quite nice from some angles, but I think they're all nice this year. I don't think there's any absolute shockers at all. So yeah, I said better. It doesn't have to look good, but it look better. Right, 72% you think yes. There we go. So there's clearly something to that. Okay, right. Next team, Haas. What do you think, Haas? What do you think of Haas? Have they improved? Are they the same, or have they gotten worse compared to last year? Is that the sound of a Minton, or is that the sound of a wife? Not sure. Oh, is that posted, or chat's pinwheeling at the minute for me? Oh, it has posted it. That was weird. Last stream I did, it just cut out midway through, didn't it? So yeah, what do we think? Because on that first day of testing, that Haas looked like an absolute nightmare. It looked like a donkey. It was really struggling on the brakes. And look, obviously they only brought one significant upgrade last season. They've definitely gone with this whole consolidation approach, and obviously first race last year, if you watched Drive to Survive, they touched on that early doors. Bahrain, Kevin moving up from P7 to P5 with the two Red Bulls conking out. Now, this season, relative to the rest of the field, are Haas going to improve? They were P8 last year. So it's kind of Williams off on their own, then it was AlphaTauri versus Haas, then it was Aston Martin versus Alfa Romeo, then it was McLaren versus Alpine, then it was kind of the top. Well, then it was kind of Mercedes versus Ferrari, really, by the end of the year anyway, and then Red Bull off on their own. But yeah, what do we think? Will they? They got decent mileage in. Again, there were no absolute shockers this year in terms of mileage, like in terms of teams with massive issues. Like we had, say, McLaren last year where their brakes were blowing up and all that. So, okay, so 45% are saying improve, 45% are saying same as well. So most of you seem to believe that they're going to move forward relative to their position last year. I guess that's the thing. If they're moving forward, then someone else has got to move back. So it does depend. But I guess in the hands of Hulk and Magnussen, Magnussen I think did a really good job at times last year. Got super unlucky with them front wing end plates. And And actually, yeah, you look at how these front wing end plates are attached as well, and how kind of little carbon fibre, now that teams are using that part of the car, where it goes from like the front wing to the end plate, they're using that to generate vortices and like sculpt it in such a way, which doesn't, it might be great for aero, but I doubt is very strong, you know? So yeah, I think Haas, very difficult to judge Haas. They've got a lot of wind tunnel testing time. They've got the Ferrari side pods. Part of me just doesn't trust Haas to be able to deliver it. But then again, it's like they just are the kind of team who would. Like, if I think who have I got more faith in, Haas or an AlphaTauri, for example, to punch above their weight. Well, I think Hülkenberg, Magnussen are very, very experienced, very, very, like, they will extract top end levels from midfield machinery, you know. So, I don't know. I'm not sure. Haas's questionable strategies, maybe mean power, maybe. They saved, true, cut their shipping costs down by having a little mini pit wall, which is very cute. If you haven't seen pictures of it, go and check it out on the Haas Twitter. They've just got a little dinky little pit wall with like 3 seats at it. But it's like, oh, do you need more than that? Maybe you don't. Maybe they are trendsetters, you know. Maybe, but yeah, we'll see on Haas. I'm in terms of my predictions for this year. I really don't know. I really don't know where I see Haas, because I just feel like they've got a really good driver lineup, but I just don't have faith in that car. But I feel like from everything I've seen, it's like I'm applying 2020, 2021 logic, and it's like, actually no, they're like, they seem to have come out of that hole that they were in. So I'm not sure if, yeah, I think same is probably where I'm sitting, but I think maybe I can get why a lot of you are saying improved as well. I do get it. Okay, cool. Haas done. Not a bad livery, again. Not a bad livery. Just not my favourite. Aston Martin, on the other hand. Absolute banger. Right, okay. Big talk around Aston Martin. What do you think of Aston Martin? Relative to last year, will they be improving? Will they be the same? Or will they be worse than last year? Let me know what you think. Also, again, I'm gonna drag this graphic in once again, because if you look at the second half of last season, they were quite comfortably clear of the bottom end, and they were certainly, I think, closer to, obviously they're 29 points ahead of AlphaTauri and more than that behind McLaren, but I think this shouldn't come as a surprise. Aston Martin had great momentum at the second half of the season. Once they changed up their philosophy, they were in a much better place. Seb was driving the absolute wheels off the car in particular. If Lance doesn't make that mistake in Austin, for example, there's opportunities throughout the season where he definitely could have picked up more points. And, I just think that it makes sense. Still, it's a bold move from Fernando, because as much as Alpine haven't looked amazing this test, like, I still think that's really bold, but I do get it as well. I do understand the move. It's a bold move, but I get it, because I think they seem to be cooking. And look, 96% of you saying improved. Wow. Yeah, they are. You can certainly say they're cooking. They are cooking something up. Obviously, shame for Lance, massive shame for Lance that he's got this injury. You read different reports, you get different responses about how long he's potentially going to be out for. One wrist, both wrists. People get, when it comes to stuff like that, people just make up stuff, and it's like, what are you doing? Just like, it will take as long as it takes. And the thing is, they've got Felipe Drugovich, which is, he's got to try his best to, seize this opportunity, because it is a great opportunity for him. It was a great opportunity to Vries when, Alex had his appendicitis last year. He took it, and he's got himself an F1 seat, and he probably wouldn't have if that hadn't happened. Probably, maybe, but probably not. I don't see how he would have. But he got that opportunity to prove himself, and he took it. And maybe Felipe Drogovic can seize an opportunity here, because F2 champion, I think there is a lot of merit in him being on track. I know people want to see Seb in that car, but like in reality, he's had no, he's retired. He's taken his foot off the gas. He's not going to be, necessarily in the physical shape he needs to be to jump into that car and do it. Maybe he doesn't want to as well. Maybe he wants to give a younger driver like a Felipe Drogovic a chance. I don't know. But don't get me wrong, like the idea of Alonso Vettel at the same team would be incredible. Like, but do I see it happening? No. But I mean, if you could give me that as an option, I would take that for sure. I just don't think I don't think it's realistic, but it would be sick. Don't get me wrong, okay? Cheers, Luke, for the 35 ZAR. Alonso was doing multiple race sims on different tyres with almost no degradation for 20 plus laps. Aston Martin about to be a monster in the race with Nando at the wheel. Well, there's a lot to suggest from what we've seen from the talk of the paddock with Dan Fallows, this being his first full car, I think, in terms of since he joined. He's kind of worked on this car from the ground up since he joined from Red Bull. The apprentice of Adrian Newey, bringing that Newey knowledge over to Aston Martin. 95% of that car apparently is new as well. Reverse sandbagging. That's jokes. With Fernando Alonso at the wheel as well, I mean, there's a prospect there. Do I think it's going to be enough for them to leapfrog into that top battle? That's a big ask. That's a huge ask. Because all of the time that Aston Martin started with one philosophy, went down a different route, have been developing, have been gradually moving up, but, you could certainly argue, like, at the end of last year, they were on par with where, like, they should have finished ahead of Alfa Romeo for sure, 100%. Like, Vettel got absolutely dicked by strategy in that final race as well, didn't they? But you look at Red Bull and Ferrari, Mercedes to less of an extent as well. You've got to think like, for them to actually jump up that high, I get the head loss. I get the, oh my God, like, look at this, like, testing, mad. But do I actually think that's going to be reality? Ugh, I'd love to. Maybe one season too early. But I think for 2024, this bodes incredibly well for 2024. Really, really well. And we know Alonso signed a multi-year deal with Aston Martin as well. So if it's not this year, will Aston Martin be fighting for a title in 2024? I don't see why not. I really don't. And yeah, look, you're right, Neo. Alonso is this is what he does. He drags cars to points that they shouldn't arguably necessarily be at. But obviously, the quicker the car, the higher up, dragging a car to P6. Well, if you've got a quicker car, you can drag it to P4. So, especially where Mercedes, and we'll get onto them, haven't looked the most convincing. And again, it's been apart from obviously Drogovic pulled up first day of the test. If you're going to break down, do it at the start of testing, not the end, I would say as well. So yes, it's not ideal that they did break down at the start. It was it hydraulics? Can't actually remember. But yeah, I think Miguel, yeah, keep your feet on the floor. Aston Martin's going to be a step forward, no doubt, but that bigger step forward, let's just give it 2023 for them to refine what they've got, and then I think the 2024 Aston Martin title challenge is very realistic. Because all of this chat in the paddock, that can't be for nothing. That can't just be all gas. That can't just be gas. There must be some validity behind what's being said. In a positive way about Aston Martin and a negative way about other teams as well. So I think 25-26 could be the year, but I think especially for Fernando as well, he's going to be desperately pushing for that car to be fighting at the front as soon as possible. 2024 could be it. We'll see. Title challenge come up. Alex, clip it, save it. All right. I predicted the AlphaTauri sale. I predicted Carlos Sainz to. Ignore all my predictions that I got wrong, by the way. I got 2 right of 100, so that's pretty good, isn't it? Surely. Yeah, keep expectations low. Then you can't be disappointed. That's a good way. Hope for the best, but expect the worst in life. You know, be prepared for the worst. But then if something good happens, sweet. But if it doesn't, you were anticipating. You know, you were prepared. Prepare for the worst. Hope for the best. That's the better way of putting it. You know, that's a better way of putting it. Right. Okay. Cool. Next, who do we have next? We have Alfa Romeo. Sorry, headphone users, but what do we think of Alfa Romeo, soon to be Audi? Relative to last season, do you think they've improved? Do you think they've stayed the same? Or do you think they will have gotten worse? Now, again, it was a tale of 2 halves for Alfa Romeo. Very good start to the season, very poor end to it. And I think in this poll, you kind of have to look at the end of the season as the more relevant part to reference, because that was where the car was by the end of the year. You know, it's comparing where you think they will be start of this year compared to, I guess, yeah, you can include all of next year, but like, it's more relevant the later in the season you get, because that's the car getting upgraded and the car changing. That looking at the Aston Martin at the start of last year has no relevance to the Aston Martin at the start of this year. It's a totally different car, completely different car. But yeah, what do we think? Now from a 38% improved. Okay. Yeah, to be honest, like, obviously Joey put it P1 on day 2, quickest time. That's the wrong overlay. This overlay is the one I want. Let's have it. So Valtteri, yeah, 130.8, and that was on the C. I think that was on C3 or C. Was it C3 or C4? I can't remember. 131 laps. So good lap time. Obviously had his gearbox issue earlier today as well. Not ideal, but again, I guess that's what testing's for. And they have the Ferrari power unit, which there is talk that they have sorted out a lot of the gremlins with that engine. Andreas Seidel's in charge now as well, yes, and they have the what's the geezer's name? Who's the new, not team principal but kind of a team principal? The turtleneck fella. I can't remember his name. It's something Brava, isn't it? I was on C5. There you go. C5 it is. But yeah, I think from it's hard to really quantify these teams, because it just feels like they're all so close. I think Joe's doing a really good job. I think he's definitely stepping up to the plate here. And obviously Valtteri, you can rely on Valtteri to bring out the performance when it is there. Aluni Bravi, that's it, George. That's it. Yeah, Aluni Bravi or something along those lines. Yeah, that's it, Owen. Exactly, the Italian guy. Yeah, just it's last year of Alfa Romeo. It'll be Sauber next year, maybe Sauber Audi. I think Karun was talking about how impressed he was with Alfa Romeo over this test. It's kind of consistent, solid. You know, Seidel's only just coming into play, so he's, you know, the changes he's going to be making are to build the team up for when Audi take over. And to build that team up so that when Audi do take over in 2026, that they will be fighting at the front, because I'm sure Audi aren't interested in having a car that will finish P7, 8, 9, 10 in the constructors. That's not what they're in F1 for. They want to be at the front, and that's Seidel's job, to build that team up. Do I think Alfa Romeo? Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think they'll get more points finishes than last year for sure. In the second half of the year anyway. How much faith do I have though? I don't know. It's very, very difficult to rate Alfa Romeo. I think the driver lineup's strong, but it's not the strongest. The car's strong, but it's not the strongest. It's very. I don't have a strong opinion. To be honest. I really don't. But we'll see. Hopefully next year it's just called Sauber. That'd be cool. I'd love to see that livery. bring back some of the classic Sauber colours of the grey. Great colour on F1. Grey. Oh, I love grey on an F1 car. I'm joking. I don't hate on grey on an F1 car. I'll be honest. It's just not the most exciting colour, is it? Maybe they'll get a nice fancy new title sponsor and not medium rare like they do at the minute. Lando punched the wall after testing the car. They said it on Sky. Really? I can't validate that information. So yeah, Sauber blue maybe. Yeah, now that Alpine have gone so pink. Well, they've had blue and yellow, but they've had white and grey and red as well. It depends. It depends. Really? Did he? Is it actually true? Hang on. I'm gonna Lando punch into Twitter. Buxton said he saw Lando Norris punch the wall in McLaren garage at his exit. Wow, Will Buxton said he saw Lando Norris punch a wall out of frustration in testing. Ooh, well. I mean, I guess we'll talk about McLaren then, won't we? That's a good timing to talk about the MCL 60, I guess, isn't it? So, what do we think of McLaren? Do we think of McLaren relative to last year? Will they have improved? Will they stay the same, or will they have gotten worse? I think I know where this one's going. I've got a sneaking suspicion. Oh, 95%. Straight in the worst. What's that Minecraft sound effect? Oof. Oof. That was perfectly timed segue, wasn't it? Oh, McLaren. Oh. Even when, so, not that I haven't mentioned it 1,000 times already. I was at the launch. Look at me. I was at the launch. Like, even there, Stella was saying about how the car wasn't... Oh, also, you know, it's interesting because they had to actually refilm that part with Zach Brown and Andreas Stella talking, because they filmed it first and then they had to film it again, so we all had to sit around more and then like clap when they come out. They had to refilm it because I don't know, there's some obviously issue on production. But you know, said, we're not necessarily 100% happy with the car, and then there's been all this negative talk at the moment. Oh my god, I need some water. I've just got a little bit of melted ice in this glass. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so they've been playing down expectations, which, you know, teams do that. Okay, teams do that. Teams do that. And then, I mean, there's playing down expectations, and then there's putting them on the floor, like, Jesus. And then, obviously, Lando's been talking very kind of, you can see, like, things aren't great. And you just look at the momentum of that team, man. It's like, it's tough, man. And it almost in a way makes me question someone I didn't think I would question. But it kind of makes me question Andreas Seidel somewhat. Because, you know, you look at that team when he came in. What year did Andreas Seidel come in? To McLaren. Let me check on Wikipedia. January 2019, he was appointed as team principal for the F1 team, right? So came in 2019. Start of 2019. 2019 was a good year. 2020 was a good year. And then 2021 was a good year as well. It wasn't like, you know, Ferrari obviously improved, stepped up massively. They were always going to. But then it's like P5 last year, and like they were slower than Alpine last year. I know we memed on Lando saying this all the time. I'm very confident in saying that they were slower than the Alpine as a package over the course of last year. And now it's not looking good, brev. You know what I mean? And like I've waxed lyrical about Seidel, but when you actually look at the numbers, you take over a team at the start of 2019, and you're very much inheriting. Like it's going to take, especially as a team principal, someone new coming in, it's going to take at least a season for your philosophies to start coming in and doing anything, right? So 2019, fine. 2020 was a good season. It was a shortened season. There was a lot of nuance to it, and again, because of the pandemic, it was like Seidel wouldn't have necessarily been able to really, put his stuff into place. And then you look at 2021, yeah, 2021 was good. Let's not throw the baby out of the bathwater. It's not all bad. Last year was okay. They had problems at the start of testing. It was okay. And then you got into this and he's just left, and now this car seems to be, I don't know. It's like we've said this so many times. Like they need to step up if they want to keep Lando, and Oscar has shown faith in this project by electing to not. Yes, they were going to send him to Williams. I understand that, but it was still with a ambition to get into that Alpine, and as a long-term prospect, Oscar had faith in this McLaren project over the long-term faith in Alpine. And, they've not turned up and been a million miles off the pace, for sure, but they've got problems. The development is clearly stagnating. From everything we've seen, they're going to be slower than Aston Martin this year. There is no reason for me to put McLaren above Aston Martin in my title predictions. There's no reason for me to do that. Like, I will be putting Aston Martin above McLaren. Spoiler alert. Of course I will. From what we've seen, of course I will. Like, yes, Lance might not hold up his end of the deal when you think Piastri's, probably going to be closer to Lando and he's going to do a good job, but still, with Alonso at the front and that Aston Martin's momentum just looking so strong, it's difficult. Shani. Lando overperforming and Daniel underperforming, I think, saved them from heavy criticism in the past few years. Thank you, Shani. And perhaps you raise a good point. Perhaps this is perhaps there has been some complacency with Lando delivering such incredible performances. Maybe he was operating at a ridiculously good level and Daniel was just doing an okay job and not that bad job. Maybe. I don't know. There's been talk for time, like Carlos Sainz said it when he left Ferrari and he first spoke to Daniel when Daniel took his spot at McLaren and said, like, this car is a strange car. It's an unusual car. It doesn't drive in a way that's typically, Carlos said it, Daniel said it, Lando's acknowledged it as well. You look at, when you see this going on, right, all this negativity around McLaren at the moment and Lando punching a wall because he's frustrated or whatever, Will Buxton grassing him up, then, it kind of makes you then rethink all of these other things in the past and be like, oh, okay, maybe that was because of that. Maybe actually, maybe things weren't quite so good, weren't quite as positive as they are. I mean, we all hear rumours. I've heard rumours. I've been hearing rumours for time. I hear them about various teams. But, McLaren's one of them that it doesn't look good. Brev. Seemingly. Apparently. Allegedly. But who knows? I'm inclined to agree. I think there's a relative step back on the horizon, and it won't give Lando the confidence that he needs to really want to stick behind that team. I feel for him. I feel for Lando because he's under a lot of pressure in this instance. He's still young, but he's operating at a really top level. And it's difficult because McLaren have supported him. They've brought him into the sport. He's got all these podiums with them now. And it's like, it's difficult for him because he's going to have to make a decision. Does he do you see a lot of football players, one club, stick with their team through and through, don't win the silverware, but stay loyal. I don't think F1 teams have the same, no, they don't. It's not a think. Of course they don't have the same, emotional connection to communities and people and fans. They just don't. Compared to football teams, it just doesn't happen. So it's like Lando Kane. Yeah, does Lando do a Harry Kane and just stay with McLaren, even if he wins nothing, or does he, do a I don't know, Robin Van Persie when he went from Arsenal to Man United. I don't know. Is that a good analogy? Sol Campbell. There we go. Does he do a Sol Campbell and go to Alpine? Direct rivals. Thank you, Sturm, for the $4.99. I appreciate it. Getting sick of the amount of people just immediately saying Logan Sargent P20 before we've even seen anything. Well, yeah, look, I mean, the thing is, right, obviously he is the rookiest rookie. Of the rookies, he's the rookiest. De Vries has raced a race in F1 and got points. Piastri did a whole season of testing for Alpine. They spent like 4 million, apparently, according to Otmar, on him testing F1 machinery. Logan's had very little running. Yes, he's a Williams driver academy, so he got a couple of FP2s last year, sure. But like, FP1, sorry. But he's the rookiest rookie, and he's in a Williams, who were the worst car last year. So you can understand why people are putting him bottom. But I do actually think Logan is going to surprise a few people. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not last. I would not be surprised. It's hard to say. Hello, Benjamin. Gareth Bale's a good example. Yeah, but he wasn't. Was he Tottenham through and through? He was at Southampton, wasn't he? I know Tottenham fans like to think that Gareth Bale was Tottenham through and through, but actually, when he went to Madrid, not that Madrid ever loved him for it though, which I always thought was harsh. But anyway, will Lando be a bit of a mercenary and leave, or will he stay loyal to McLaren? That's the thing. I think we've had this. You know, I mean, maybe he should. It depends who he has in his ear. If he's got Fernando Alonso trying to give him advice, then he's straight out, because Fernando does not give. He's gone, bosh, out the door. If it suits for that, and kind of you have to be that way. You really do. Like if you wanna, it depends what you want. Do you want to go down a hero for one team, and be revered by this team that you've raced for the rest of their history? If you do a full, we don't really see that. That doesn't seem to happen. I mean, Max Verstappen, I guess, for Red Bull Racing, but at the end of the day, it's still just a big company that sells cars or sells energy drinks, So, but I hope for Oscar and I hope for Lando, because they both, like Oscar with his junior career, Lando with everything he's done so far, they deserve the platform. But you can deserve it all you like in F1. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. Fernando Alonso deserved more title-winning cars underneath him, but he didn't get them. It happens. It happens. Hulkenberg deserved a podium, but he didn't get one. Yet. Coming soon. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. Right, okay. So 83% of you think worse, 14% same, and 3% think McLaren would have improved. 3% copium. For those 3% of people, I pray for you. Cheers, Sid. What if Williams beat McLaren by the end of 2023? Oh my God, that would be jokes. Piastri rejected Williams. Alpine via Williams for McLaren, and then Williams are quicker than McLaren. Imagine. Right, okay, we've talked enough about McLaren. Time for Alpine. Okay, Alpine. What do you make of Alpine? Have they improved relative to last season? Are they the same relative as last season, or are they gotten worse relative to the rest of the field compared to last season? What do we think? You feel like Alpine don't show their hand? Yeah, Alpine's test hasn't been the most convincing for sure. I mean, again, let's bring up the overlay of the times, and you can see they're kind of down towards the bottom, Pierre and Esteban. Good lappage on the board, 76.56. But yeah, not anything particularly impressive pace-wise. Cards close to chest seems like the trail of thought, Obviously, new driver lineup, sure. Car development, 58% of you say same, 11% improved, 31% of you think worse. For me, I'm a lot more positive about Alpine than I am about McLaren. I will say that. But also, you've got to say that manufacturer backing of Renault, Gasly and Ocon at the wheel, you've got a very talented driver lineup there. All French, Allez les Bleus, love it. Also, those wheel trims look sick when the wheel's moving as well. They look quality. There's no excuse. For me, there's really no excuses for Alpine to not be now closer to like being able to fight with where like Mercedes and being able to do what Mercedes were able to do last year, which is not necessarily be in the fight at the start of the season, but by the end of the season, be in that fight. What's the excuse now? Like, you've got the team, you've got the financial backing, you've been that team for a long time. You've got Ocon as a driver who's been there for a long time as well. He's well established, well bedded in. You've got Gasly coming in, who's proven that he's top tier as well. Two drivers who for sure deserve their seats in the sport. Both race winners, yes, they took the opportunities that came to them, which is, there's a lot to be said for that, because both didn't. They might have got lucky in both of their wins, but that doesn't mean that they came easy. When you're in a midfield car, you have to take the luck that's presented to you. I would be surprised if Alpine aren't still top of the midfield, but I think they should be striving for more than that. They should be pushing for higher than that. The car looks complicated, as do they all. I'm not an aerodynamicist, as you can tell, but they've kept it very coy in testing, from what I've seen anyway. And I think Alpine are gonna improve relative to last year. I'm in the minority here. Only 14% of you think improved. 58% of you think same. Again, relative to the rest of the field, I think they're going to be closer to the fight at the front than they were last year. I do. I could be wrong. Maybe they are sandbagging. Maybe. And again, like, sandbagging is just like, is there, for a midfield team, where's the value in, pushing fully in testing? Is there value? It depends on the team. It depends on how they choose to approach things, and do they want to set expectations too high? But I don't think there's no excuse for Alpine to not be fighting with like Mercedes. I really don't. Whether it will happen or not is another matter, but I don't think there's any excuse for it to not. So, especially with Gasly and Ocon at the wheel. I know things went a bit mad with Piastri, and it's a shame for them that they lost him, but at the end of the day, it's like, good drivers, allez le bleu, French, chuck money at Renault. I saw a brand new Renault electric one on the road yesterday. It actually looks sick. It's actually really nice. 72 plate, very nice. But we'll see. We'll see. Also, if you've watched Drive to Survive, there's a section with Otmar and at BWT for like a launch dinner, and it's so funny. It's just this sea of people in pink just chanting Otmar, and like it's I don't do it justice. It's so much better than I just made it out to be. Honestly, it's great. Just watch it just for that. You don't need to watch anything else. Just watch it just for that. I've watched like half of it, and it's been actually pretty good. There's not been too much cringe. There's been a little bit of cringe in terms of the edit, but it's not been too cringy. Not too cringy. Right. Don't go watch it now. Watch this. Come on. Right. Okay, that poll's done. Next we have Mercedes. What do you think of Mercedes? So again, this is a car that by the end of last year was winning races and scored more points than Ferrari in the second half of last year as well. So do you think they've improved relative to the field from last year, or do you think they will be the same, or do you think they will have gotten worse? Because again, just like Alpine, really difficult to accurately have an idea of what they are doing. Let me show you this overlay again. You can see that Mercedes outscored Ferrari in the second half of the season by 27 points. So that's a whole race win, fastest lap plus another 1 point, which is significant. I think the second half of the year, you see how that car developed and they turned it around. Ferrari were obviously dropping big bozo moments in terms of strategy, no question, and you have to take that into account as well. Did Ferrari have the faster car in the second half of the season than Mercedes? Yes, I think so, but that's not the only thing that wins you races and wins you points. So What do we think? Mercedes better than last year, improved, or the same? 45% improved, 43% same. Yeah, I think there's a... Again, if you just look at the second half of the season, they were... On certain tracks, they were fighting for poles right at the top, but on a very select few tracks. And I think that's obviously, certain tracks really punished how low they had to run that car to the ground. But also you forget that was George's first season at the team, first full season anyway. He had experience, which obviously would have helped. But I don't know why I feel Mert might be sandbagging. Maybe Squirrel. I'm not going to say the first part of your name, but maybe. Appreciate the fiver. I just, again, sandbagging implies an intentional reduction in performance to purposefully manipulate the perception of the team. I just made that sound way more complicated than it needs to be. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. It's just how much is it worth pushing in testing when you can get the data you need? And again, look, one lap pace is not going to win you a title. We saw that last year. 9 pole positions for Charles, 7 for Max. That Ferrari was quicker in one lap, but ended up miles behind the Red Bull because points are won on Sunday. So I think that I hope, because I want a 3-car title fight, at least, maybe more, maybe Aston Martin as well. Maybe invite them to the party, but at least the 3-car title fight is all. That's my priority. I don't give a honestly, for the top 6. I mean, because Max has won 2 now. Yeah, it would be nice to see someone else win it. Lewis has won 7, so it would be nice to see someone else win it as well. Although I would like him to get the 8. Obviously, yes, George title, Checo title, Carlos title would be sick, but I don't really care that much who would win it. I just want a 3-car title fight, please. I beg you. And yeah, like you say, Darian, certain tyres are gonna excel with certain cars, and Mercedes had a good race car last year. They didn't have a great qualifying car, but their race car was very strong. So again, is testing gonna necessarily show the improvements they've made in their race car? No, not really. Bro forgot Charles. Well, yeah, Charles is no brainer. Obviously, I want Charles to win the title. Obviously, I did forget to say Charles, but I've said 5 drivers. I've said 5 drivers. Who have I missed out? But yeah, I think Mercedes will be good. I do think they'll be up there. Do I think they'll have done enough to eclipse Red Bull car performance-wise? No, but I do think the fact that I think George and Lewis are driving at a very similar level, and that doesn't seem to be the case at Red Bull with their 2 drivers. I think that's something that stands Mercedes in good stead in that way. You could argue the same. I think Carlos and Charles were pretty close as well. So yeah. So you want Lewis to win instead of Max? I don't know. I think, would I like to see? I think Max, for the way he's been driving, I couldn't fault him for winning 3 titles in a row. I want Lewis to get the record. But I wouldn't have much. I didn't have a horse in the race in 2021, and I wouldn't really have much of a horse in the race in 2023 if it came to them 2 again. But we'll see. When are your predictions coming? Soon. This week. Don't worry. That's the big video this week for sure. Actually, at the top 6, who would I like to see win the title most? Oh, who would I like to see it win it the most? Actually, in terms of who I'd like to see win it the most, the fact that the story and the journey that Checo has taken, I think he's had to because yes, he's had support from Carlos Slim, and he brings a lot of personal sponsorship, but him having to move away from Mexico so young, move into Europe, which is a very difficult. Like, you know, you have to be in Europe in the junior karts to really get that experience, and that's a huge move. And then to like fight in the midfield and just get equipment that never really held up, you know, for so long. He got that win, and then, you know, all the stuff he does, like he does all the charity work he does, he gives millions away. Like, he's clearly a very, very, like, very good bloke. And yeah, I just think that to see him win a title would just be like, I'd be so happy for him, but I'd also like imagine if Checo won a title, the Mexican fan base would be, the Latin American fan base more broadly would just, oh my God, that would be imagine Checo's dad. Imagine Checo's dad if he won a title. Oh my God, that man. Oh, wholesome. Makes me tear up just thinking about it. Honestly, that would be unreal. I would love that. Do I think it's going to happen? No, sorry, I don't. But if it did, oh my God. No, that's the one. That is the one for me. Out of the top 6, if Checo won it, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, I get excited just thinking about it. Nice fantasy. Shame Verstappen exists. It is a shame. No, I just think that whole story arc would just be so good. It would be so good. Right. Anyway, next team. Right. So you've said 46% think Mercedes would have improved relative to last year. I'm inclined to agree. I think I'm going to agree with that one. Last two teams. God, we've gone for an hour 15 minutes. Over an hour 15 minutes. Let's talk about Ferrari now. What do you make of Ferrari? So, will they have improved relative to the field from last season? Will they stay the same, or will they have gotten worse? Ferrari. Grazie ragazzi. They had a very quick car, one lap pace. Second half of the season, their performance just wasn't there. Whether that's turning the engine down to save on reliability issues, which did plague the team, as well as the reliability of their strategy, clearly plaguing the team. Ferrari, do they... I think in terms of car performance, relative to... Do I think they'll be closer to Red Bull? Because there were... Again, second half of the season, there were way more races where the Red Bull just took off and the Ferrari looked nowhere near. And the Ferrari kind of fell into the clutches of Mercedes. Do I think Ferrari are going to be able to sustain a competitive car relative to Red Bull this season? I do believe that, based off of a combination of logic and copium. It's sport, so of course you have to balance the two out, don't you? It's not all just one. There's two things. Yeah, engines improved. Engine improvements from reliability point of view. Charles and Carlos just being more complete drivers and improving as themselves. Fred Vasseur being prepared to make the tough decisions when he needs to on a driver front, in terms of, for example, if you've watched Silverstone, the Carlos Sainz story, Drive to Survive, I'm so happy Carlos won that race. But it made no sense what Ferrari did. It made no sense. You clearly have to, that stage, you see Max is starting to get away. You have to prioritise Charles. You have to give him the better strategy. You have to give him the more... You have to prioritise. Like you do. You can't. This is where, and Mattia Binotto said it. He was like, "We don't need a number one driver." That doesn't fly. That doesn't fly unless you're so dominant like Mercedes were, where they could do that with Nico and Lewis, because Daniel in the Red Bull was the next best. Like, he was back there in 2014 anyway. You can do that then, but that's an incredibly, like, when you're fighting toe to toe with another team, you can't do that. You have to pick a driver at some stage. You have to Pick a driver and go for it. And yes, it is that cold in this house. Have I got a No, I don't. It's pretty chilly. I did put the heating on actually. I'm going to turn the heating off. It's been on long enough, and I've got a coat on. You have to pick a driver, and I think Fred is going to be prepared to make those choices. He said this. He's like, which is right. You give both drivers at the start of the season. You kind of let both drivers go for it. And then you get to a point and you have to play it strategically. Yeah, if your team's checking out and you're hundreds of points ahead, then okay, yeah, maybe don't prioritise and just let them race. But I just think it was naive of Binotto. I think that was my biggest fault with him, and I think that's what cost him in the end. He wasn't prepared to make that tough call. As well as strategy, there's a new head strategist. I think the guy's from India. I think he's was based in the UK. I think went to school, university, whatever you want to call it, in the UK as well. So they're making some changes, moving some pieces around. We all saw the strategy problems laid bare. Fred is going to be as aware as anyone else was. How many times that, I didn't even think about Miami. Like they talk about in Drive to Survive, how Ferrari bottled that one as well by just not bringing like the Ferraris in. When there's a cheap pit stop, could have comfortably fought. But that's it, Ravin Jane, and yeah, I just think that. I just hope, man, because again, Charles has done everything right, really. Like, yeah, he's made some mistakes. Don't get me right. He has made mistakes that come from pushing and knowing you need to push. And by pushing 100% and slightly overstepping that line, it's like, and I think we'll see this hopefully with Ferrari being right up there with Red Bull, is that Max and Charles do both have to push and maybe do make more mistakes because they have to get one over on the other. They have to be. Max, second half of the last season, Max could just put his feet up and chill. Like he could just drive comfortably at 90% and it would be enough. Once he'd kind of drove 100% maybe at the start, he could just settle in. We don't want that. We want these drivers pushing 100% because there is value in pushing 100%. And if you do push 101% and put it into a wall, then that happens, And Charles felt he needed to push that hard at France, and it ended the way it did. So, but I think from an entertainment value point of view for us as racing fans, like this is what we want to see, Pull your fingers out, Ferrari. Come on, Fred. I've got faith in Fred. I'm feeling good about Fred. I'm feeling good about Fred. No! Yeah, it was good. It was a good soundbite, wasn't it? That'll follow Charles for the rest of his career. But you know what? I think he'll look back on... Once he's got a few world titles, then Charles will look back on that and be like, ha, remember that? Remember when I put it into the wall and went, no! Reese, thank you very much, mate. Thank you very much. Got one more team to go. Personally, I think we'll see toddler atmosphere at Ferrari. Someone from outside, someone who's not too invested in the emotion and history of Ferrari to help them going forward. Yes, yeah, Reese, I don't disagree. I think, is Fred's CV incredible in terms of titles and success at Sauber? No, but he's been in he co-founded ART. He was at Renault briefly, and there's just too much politics seemingly at Renault. Like Fred seems very no nonsense, which I think is exactly what Ferrari needed. Someone who's come in prepared to, stamp their authority, and again, yeah, like you say, Reese, kind of someone from outside of that bubble that Ferrari is, and that echo chamber and that pressure and that stress. Because Binotto was a Ferrari man. Binotto was working on the engine back when Michael Schumacher was winning titles for fun. He was Rubens Barrichello's, I think, race engineer, performance engineer or something. He understood the pressure, and that was always going to make the pressure worse. And again, he touches on that on DTS. I think we get a really nice insight into Binotto on DTS from what I've seen, actually, because it was always kind of, we'd always see him just as quite a, robotic kind of character and wouldn't really see much of his personality. But he actually seems like a really, which kind of made me a bit sad, because I was like, oh, he actually seemed like a really, like, a solid bloke without too much of an ego. But maybe I'm sure the ego's there, it just presents itself differently, right? But anyway, enough of Ferrari. Thank you for the super chat, Reese. Much appreciated. Finally, we are here at Red Bull. Red Bull Racing. What do we think of Red Bull? We think of Red Bull relative to last season. Will they be even better than they were last season in terms of relative to the field? Will they be about the same, or will they be worse than they were relative to the field? In which case, we might actually get a title fight that lasts more than just the first third of the season. Improved. A lot of you saying improved. This is why I like when Christian was like, oh, this extra 7% off of our ATR time is going to cost us between a quarter and a half a second. I was like, really? Look, Red Bull have got the best car from last year, the best overall car. Maybe not the quickest in qualifying, but the best overall car. You don't win points in qualifying. And you've got Max just driving at ridiculous levels. The guy, like, Max made so few mistakes last year and did so much right last year. It's very, for another team to come in and make a car that, they could build a car, Ferrari, Mercedes, whoever, Aston Martin, could build a car that matches Red Bull toe to toe. But then to expect any driver, and I'm including Lewis, I'm including Fernando, I'm including Charles, to go toe-to-toe with Max and beat them right now, that is a huge ask. Because the confidence, the absolute performance that kid's putting in at the minute is insane. And I don't care whether you like him or not. You're allowed to think whatever you think. You can't deny that Max and the way he's just asserted himself in that team and almost not. It's of course Red Bull are going to consolidate around him because he is just stupidly good at the minute. And it's like, I think people talking about, he's saying about potentially retiring at 2028. He's got his Red Bull contract till 2028 and signed this Heineken deal till 2028. And it's like, yeah, but if he retires in 2028, you might think, oh, he's only 30. But it's like, well, yeah, but he started when he was 17. Like, he would have had 13, 14 years of his life driving F1 cars. Like, I can't really blame him for wanting to go off and do something else. Maybe, yeah, he could stay in F1 if he wanted and win double-figure titles. He could 100% do that. Like, he's clearly got the ability. And if he keeps a good car and a good team around him, Max could get double-figure world titles. That could easily happen. I don't think it will, because I don't think he'll want to go on for that long, personally. I could see him moving on from F1 and doing Le Mans. I could see him doing something else because it would have taken up 13 years of his life. Lewis was 22 in his debut season. So if he'd gone for 13 years, he would have retired at 35, which is about the norm. Like, that's how old Vettel was when he retired. So yeah, it's one of them. We'll see with Max. We'll see with Max. Thank you, Luisma, by the way, for the €5. I don't think Red Bull. I don't think Red Bull Racing will win that many races. I bet the points will be more divided. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, yeah. So like, it won't be so dominant from Red Bull this year. I am inclined to the way that I say this, like, the first third of the season. Like, for me, an absolutely dominant season is one where, like, a Michael Schumacher-esque season where he won, like, whatever stupid percent of races. Max didn't dominate the season in that way, to that extent last year, because you look at the first third of the season and Leclerc's right up there fighting with him. and Leclerc got more pole positions last year as well. And then it just kind of, as the Red Bull got better, the Ferrari got more incompetent, and Mercedes started taking points off Ferrari as well. And it's like it all kind of worked out, and it ended up being a massive gulf in the end. But I don't think Red Bull will be as clear as they were last year, just because I think everyone else is going to have more of an understanding of their car and the philosophies involved, and being able to take more points off of. And I think a lot of the pressure is on. I think there's more pressure on Checo this year as well, because Red Bull had a package last year that was clear by the end of the year in terms of a race car, and Checo still wasn't able to finish second. He still lost out to Charles, and I just feel like as Ferrari improve on their package, as Mercedes start the season strong and don't just end it strong, I like Checo really needs to get closer to Max. Like he does. I know this is like we've said this so many times, but he does need to get closer to Max, because it's just, from a constructor's point of view, but also from a helping out your teammate point of view, like having those options when you've got two drivers up at the front. This was the problem with Gasly. This was the problem with Albon, that they weren't up there enough. And it's like, if the Ferrari are going to come closer, if the Mercedes are going to come closer, having two drivers getting the maximum performance out of that car is so important. So again, we'll see. It remains to be seen, but yeah, it's hard to look past Red Bull, isn't it, for the title? Truly, it really is. Thank you, Hop Haze, for the $5. Could you see Max trying to do the Triple Crown? Monaco, Indy, and Le Mans would be pretty epic. You're going to Monaco quali any tip? Oh, jealous. I've got no tips because I've never been to Monaco. I would love to go to Monaco for qualifying. That would be Monaco, to go there Friday, Saturday, and then watch the race on a nice big telly, do a stream. Last lap from Monaco, for example, would be unreal. Yeah, I think Max is definitely going to go for the Triple Crown. 100%. I would be absolutely shocked if Max doesn't try for the Triple Crown. Definitely. He's a sim racer. He's done the Indy 500 loads of times on the sim rig, and he's going to be able to translate his quality to the Indy 500. Sure, definitely, no doubt. He said he doesn't care for it. Really? Nah, come on, Max. You've got to try that, man. Surely. Because it's too dangerous. Now, I don't think that would. I think he'd do it. I think he'd do it. He might be saying that now, but I think he'd do it. Come on, Max. You've got. Come on. You have to do the Indy 500, Max. Surely. Sure. I hope he's one of the 1,900 people watching. If you're watching, Max, do it. Come on. Well, start caring about the Triple Crown now, all right? Start caring. Okay. Well, he's definitely doing the Le Mans 24 anyway, isn't he? Definitely doing that. Right, okay, we're done. We've talked about every team. Given our thoughts and feelings on testing. And... oh, roll intro again, because I didn't make it... I didn't hide it. But that's it. We're done. We're done, everyone. Finished. It was a long stream. Hour and a half over. Oh, stretch. Thank you to everyone who's watched live. Cheers, Koala, Bra, Joey, Charmander, NR88, Judston, Christian, Keshav, Static, Spartacus. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to everyone who's watching this after the fact and audio-only listeners in your ears. Predictions. I've got a Word doc open on here, which I've got an idea. I think I'm going to change some around. We'll see. I'm going to hopefully get that out on Tuesday, Wednesday. That's what I'm thinking, because I'm doing the live show on Monday, actually, by the way. If anyone here in live chat is coming to the live show on Monday, then I'll see you then. Exciting. So we're almost there. It's going to be fun. I think Minton's downstairs. I'm not gonna. This has been too long a stream already. I'm not gonna go get Minton. I'm pretty sure he's downstairs. So yeah. Thank you everyone for coming. Like the stream if you haven't liked it already. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure you subscribed. Notification bell so you don't miss my stuff. All that good stuff. Oh, and I got my I've got to do my pre-race stream next week for the first race for round 1 of 23 in 2023, Bahrain. Yes. Excited. No, thank you all for coming. That was fun. I enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed the stream. And I'll see you when I see you. Ciao, adios. I'm done. Goodbye.